we're expecting around 500 dignitaries to attend, including the United States President, Joe Biden, and the Emperor of Japan, and pretty well everybody in between. Prime Minister Liz Truss will be meeting her New Zealand and Australian counterparts later today. We saw the Australian Prime Minister, as I said, in Westminster Hall just now, and Jacinda Ardern was going about her business yesterday, I think, but we know that she is meeting the Prime Minister and also the King and the Prince of Wales. So let's cross live now again to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is there outside Buckingham Palace, where all of that work, that global diplomacy, as well as the family planning of what's going to happen on Monday, is going on behind you. It's a magnificent bit of architecture. It is a royal palace, but it's an office block as well, in a curious way, Darren.
Yeah, and indeed, and it's, Alistair, in many ways, the home of our diplomacy, isn't it? I mean, the countless state banquets that have been held in Buckingham Palace, official receptions for leaders from across the world over time, it's quite extraordinary. We keep doing this, so King Charles has returned to Buckingham Palace in the last, 30 minutes or so after that walkabout, meeting people in the queue to see, who were lining up to see Queen Elizabeth II lying in state in Westminster Hall. He's returned, and yet there is still lots of frenetic activity here at Buckingham Palace. We every so often see ambassadorial cars, and clearly, actually, as you say, some leaders go in and out of the palace, and that's only going to crank up as we get closer to Monday. We're expecting this big reception tomorrow night, hosted by the King, for some of those 500 odd dignitaries that are going to attend the funeral on Monday. Prime ministers, presidents, kings, emperors, princes, princesses. I mean, it's going to be an extraordinary gathering of some of the most powerful people on the planet. I don't think the UK has seen, or indeed maybe any other country in the world, seen anything quite like this since the state funeral of Winston Churchill back in 1965. Just to give you a sense of some of the names that are going to arrive here, we get that from the meetings that Liz Truss, the Prime Minister, is going to have tomorrow, because it's not just the King who is flexing some of Britain's diplomatic soft power, but indeed the Prime Minister too. She's scheduled to meet Joe Biden, the US President, in Downing Street, Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach from Ireland, and Poland's President Duda as well. And those meetings, we're not really going to get a sense, actually, of what's said in those meetings, unfortunately, because it's a period of national mourning. They're not recognised as proper bilaterals, but clearly this will be an attempt for the new Prime Minister to also get to know some of those leaders from around the world. But the eyes will be on that big reception tomorrow night, and frankly, it is a big challenge, isn't it? Not just for the government and indeed for the Foreign Office, but also for the Metropolitan Police as well, because the security around many of these world leaders will be incredibly tight. We are also expecting them actually to view the coffin, some of them, in Westminster Hall, and as you rightly pointed out, we saw at least Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, do that yesterday. I suspect we will see some more of those leaders do that in the next 36 hours or so when they turn up to London. And then also they'll be given a chance, Alistair, to go to Lancaster House, which is not terribly far from here. In fact, it's right next to St James's Palace, so that they can sign a book of condolence.
Just as you're finishing that, and I didn't want to interrupt because we're seeing another changing of the guard there. And no woke me, but it was nice to see that there was a woman yeoman warder of the guard there as well, and finishing her duty as we look at that extraordinary, I still find it extraordinary images, these young men and women standing rigidly to attention for their 20-minute stints, and as and when other folk come back, and as Darren was just saying, if we do see other world leaders, we'll give you a look at that. Darren, to pick up with you again, something that crossed my mind this morning as well was that stick with the politics for a moment, which is your I mean, you have many strong suits, but that's your main one. That Liz Truss has the huge advantage in this extraordinary time where within 10 days we change prime ministers and we change monarchs, that her previous job was as foreign secretary. But you think of someone like James Cleverly, who I know you know very well indeed, the new foreign secretary. I mean, 5 minutes ago he was education secretary, and before that he was doing another job. The learning curve for the new government, as much as for the new monarchy, is incredibly steep.
Indeed, incredibly steep, and we've seen that, haven't we, really, with the Prime Minister, actually, as you say, in the last week or so, in that she has had to step up into, this role of being Prime Minister, in part leading the nation during a period of national mourning. She's been travelling all over the country, attending those services that the King has been as well. But you're right, it is also a big, steep learning curve for all those cabinet ministers. And while kind of politics, if you like, has been put on hold for 10 days, believe me, when the period of national mourning ends, which is next Monday night, so once we get to Tuesday and Parliament comes back on Wednesday, that's when again the cold hard reality of politics is going to hit this government. Cost of living crisis, we're going to get a fiscal statement, Prime Minister's going to New York to address the UN, and then there's party conferences, and there is no sign, Alistair, that things are going to get any easier or indeed slow down for any of our politicians once this period of national mourning and the Queen's funeral is finished.